and theirs. Any other pronoun used in reference to a transgender woman is completely unrespectable. It denies their dignity and will not be accepted, nor will I tolerate it. I have been a member of this congregation for about 4 years now. I have been a Unitarian Universalist for about 6 years. I spent my first years at Westside Baptist Church, Westside Unitarian Church in Fort Worth, and then I moved to First Unitarian Church in Louisville, Kentucky, where I served as the greeting coordinator there, and I served about 2.5 to 3 years here as a greeting coordinator. What does it mean to be transgender? According to Merriam-Webster, transgender means of, relating to, or being a person who identifies with or expresses a gender identity that differs from the one which corresponds to the person's sex at birth. For me, it meant growing up with a sense of self that did not seem to match expectations. It did not mean a desire to wear dresses or play with dolls, although I was open to the idea. As a matter of fact, I loved playing with our dogs, riding my bicycle, climbing trees, swimming, spending time in the woods, throwing dirt clods, becoming one with nature. Clothing optional. I just did not identify with the constant physical competitiveness of boys who, to me, always seemed to be physically fighting. They always seemed to target me out and try to challenge me, and I just didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I preferred the company and conversation of girls when they were being their authentic self and not being the hyper-feminized little girls that people were trying to make them be. And women, like my mother, all the women in my family, with whom I felt a strong emotional symbiance. I know it can be very hard for most people to grasp how one can have an internal sense of self that is different from the body they were born into. I had the opposite problem. I found it difficult to understand how people could not be fluid, not have in their ideas the concept of actually changing who they are in any kind of form, in their self-identity and their expression. I had a Fort Laramie set, and literally I would take the heads of the Indians and swap them with the heads of the cowboys. I thought that was fair. That seemed historically accurate. But I have come to learn that people who cannot feel a sense of gender fluidity is the way that nature made them, and I am the way that nature made me. Being transgender means that other people feel like they have the freedom to define your sense of identity. Churches whisper to you that it's Satan talking. Radical feminists tell you that sexual biology predetermines your sense of self and that you are misguided. I grew up in a Southern Baptist congregation. I was constantly being told, even by my grandmother, who was a Baptist minister's wife, that no, you don't want to change your body. You don't want to live as anything other than the body that you were born into. This last couple of 3 weeks, the Southern Baptist Convention adopted a resolution that basically denies transgender people their sense of identity. I sent a letter, posted blog entries in as many places as can be that said, please strike my name from the records. You are hurting way too many people, including myself. Radical feminists will tell you that these are just for transgender women, that these are men that are trying to occupy women's spaces, that they are in fact being rapists in their spaces. And I will tell you, that is absolutely not true, because we tend to be raped and assaulted more than anybody else. Being transgender, for me, meant going on an identity quest for 30 years. It meant suppressing who I was and what I felt because people would think I was crazy. It meant that if I ever outed myself and what I thought were my perverse fantasies, I would lose my home, my job, my family, and my dignity. More than ever, all my life, I sought to be loved, to find someone who could possibly understand, to share the rest of my life with. I Had the opportunity to meet Kristen Beck finally in person this week. We've been communicating over Facebook for some time. She's a wonderful woman. And I too spent a period of my time as a Navy veteran, trying to become the ultimate man. It just was never reachable for me. For many people, being transgender means losing their home, it means losing their job, their careers, their employability, it means losing their family, it means losing their dignity. Gay and lesbian people can finally serve openly. Transgender people cannot serve in the military openly. It's don't ask, don't tell still for them. They are still considered to be mentally deranged, mentally damaged, not capable of protecting our country and doing what's best for us. This don't ask, don't tell also goes out into our corporate climate. I know one person who was a successful car salesman who transitioned, and because the application always said put your former name on there, put her former male name. She sent it to every auto dealership across the USA, and because she did so, she destroyed her own career. We shouldn't live in a place that's don't ask, don't tell. We should be allowed to be our authentic selves. For many people, being transgender means working the streets as a prostitute, engaging in sex work, being beaten, raped, and even murdered. Kristen Beck, a Navy SEAL, walking the streets, was punched in the back of her head. For many people, being transgender means taking your own life instead of facing those consequences. For some people, being transgender means going on a spiritual quest, finding a spiritual connection that uplifts who they are as a unique individual, learning to love themselves, and having that love spill over to other people. Being transgender can come to mean being a part of a larger community, becoming courageous, and becoming a beacon to others. Being transgender means being beautifully gifted when one has friends, allies, and support. The biggest reason that many people try to take their own lives is because they have lost hope. They have lost their sense of meaning for living. They feel that the future has nothing left for them to look forward to. For those of us who work in support, it is a condition that we are constantly on the guard for. According to Wikipedia, and some of you will understand this and others will get it as I explain it. Learned helplessness is a mental state in which an organism forced to endure aversive stimuli or stimuli that are painful or otherwise unpleasant becomes unable or unwilling to avoid subsequent encounters with those stimuli, even if they are escapable, presumably because it has learned that it cannot control the situation. In 1967, Martin Seligman and Steve Meyer of the University of Pennsylvania did a series of shock experiments on dogs. In the first group, the control group, the dogs were put into a harness and then released. In the second group, the dogs were subjected to shocks they learned to control and end by pressing a lever and thereby escape their fate. But in the third group, the dogs were randomly shocked so that nothing they did, not even pushing the levers, would stop the shocks. In the end, when the third group of dogs were released, they showed a sense of helplessness and depression, and they didn't even bother to try to escape. Viktor Frankl was a Viennese therapist that was captured by the Nazis during World War II and sent to the concentration camps on December 25th, 1942. He had done a lot of work prior to that time counseling people from taking their own lives, but because he was a Jew, he was not allowed to treat Aryans, and eventually he and his family were taken into custody during the latter days of the war. In Man's Search for Meaning, Victor tells of being separated from his family and people randomly selected to die. He would watch as people suddenly gave up hope and proceeded to sink into clinical depression and die in front of him and the others. What he found was that people who found some reason to live, some vision, such as reuniting with their families or thoughts of skiing on the Austrian slopes, did everything they could to resist the life-threatening depression, despite the conditions and the random violence. They were the ones who survived the concentration camps. Victor finally reveals his own personal meaning of life at the end of the book, and it is to help other people find their meaning. My counselor had assigned me this book to read when I was in the midst of my own struggles with transitioning. It literally changed my life because I took this book to heart too. Because I live to give other people hope. It's why I created the social support network for people in transition. Why I defend my brothers and sisters every time I get a chance and tell my story as many times as I can. It's why I decided to fight for LGBT rights. Why I joined T of Utah as their volunteer coordinator. And why I decided I was going to start running for office this year, so that we can tackle other issues that threaten to remove our hope, such as dirty air, substandard education, inadequate health care. It is all about hope. Viktor Frankl wrote, "A thought transfixed me. For the first time in my life, I saw the truth as it is set into song by so many poets, proclaimed as the final wisdom by so many thinkers, the truth that love is the ultimate and the highest goal to which man can aspire. Then I grasped the meaning of the greatest secret that human poetry and human thought and belief have to impart. The salvation of man is through love and in love. I understand how a man who has nothing left in this world still may know bliss, be it only for a brief moment, in the contemplation of his beloved, in a position of utter desolation when man cannot express himself in positive action, when his only achievement may consist in enduring his sufferings in the right way, an honorable way. In such a position, man can, through loving contemplation of the image he carries of his beloved, achieve fulfillment. For the first time in my life, I was able to understand the meaning of the words, the angels are lost in perpetual contemplation of an infinite glory." The pink triangle tells us that LGBT people, as well as Jews, were arrested and sent to the concentration camps. Up until that time, when the National Socialists came to power, Germany was actually having a progressive flowering. A center for the study of LGBT people was directly across the street from the Reichstag. When the Reichstag was burned down, so was the center, and lists of the people who had been there were seized and undoubtedly used to round them up for the concentration camps. This week, on the 40th anniversary of the first Gay Freedom Day in Utah, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals announced, "We hold that the 14th Amendment protects the fundamental right to marry, establish a family, raise children, and enjoy the full protection of a state's marital laws. A state may not deny the issuance of a marriage license to two persons or refuse to recognize their marriage based solely upon the sex of the persons in the marriage union. For the reasons stated in this opinion, we affirm," i.e. the plaintiffs. On Wednesday, love won. But the battle is far from over. We still have to find out what the Supreme Court intends to do with this decision. People can still be denied housing, employment, military service, and medical care because of who they are or who they love. And we all need to stand firm on the side of love. And at this point, I would like to welcome Alex Miller, the Vice Chair of T of Utah.